Welcome to the show. We're going to be getting started in just a few minutes. If it's your first time on the show, if you wouldn't mind, let me know what state you're voting from. Manu Tandon, yo. How you doing, Manu? Welcome to the show. We're going to be getting started in just a few minutes. What state are you voting from, Manu? Joey Jojo Shabadoo. I have a dent in my head. I do. Got an injury when I was a kid. Left me with a lasting scar. Fun story. Not the only scar I have. Yep, we are going to get started in just a moment. Okay. I think we're just about ready to get going. I've seen some podcasters who do their show without drinking anything. I don't know how they do it because talking this much dries you out. Though maybe that's just something that comes with practice. Okay. I think we can pretty much get started. All right. So thanks to everybody who's G. Will Arces from Thread. G. Will Arces, turn the music down. That nerd music. In my world, that's intro music. I need theme music. So that's consistently what I use to open my show. It makes it identifiable. However, thanks to everybody who came in for the start of the show. I know that with this kind of format, people come in throughout. My name's Gene, screen name The Last Good Man in Jersey. I spend a lot of time talking about the election leading up to 2024, and let's face it, there's been a lot of news that's been happening as we're getting closer to election day, and in this last week in particular, there has been a whole lot of new developments, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Because we got to focus on something that people have been talking about, but they haven't really been hitting on directly, and that's the whole Trump case, the hush money case in New York, and what's going on. Now, just as a quick recap, Donald Trump was just recently found guilty on 34 counts in a hush money case in New York, where he was accused of paying Stormy Daniels, by cooking the books, to keep quiet about the affair that they had just prior to him running for office in 2016. And it was a very weird case because normally a case like this wouldn't see court. Sleeping with, having an affair is not illegal. Paying a woman to keep quiet about it is not illegal. But what happened here is that because he was running for office, they didn't just treat this like it was infidelity. They said, well, you're trying to misrepresent yourself to voters. And because you're running for federal office, that becomes a federal offense. So that's what elevated this trial to the point where it was in the news, and he's facing, he's been convicted, but he's facing what could be jail time, still TBD, over something that a lot of people don't really believe is that serious a crime. If you remember, there is, let's say, a precedent of presidents fooling around behind their wife's back. You can just go to Bill Clinton, and there's plenty of precedent of presidents going behind their wives' back to do things. So what Trump did isn't new. What Trump did, you could argue, isn't something that should be tried to this level, but it has been. And what we have to do at this point is not so much focus on the ins and outs of the case. The case has been tried. The determination has been made. There are steps that are going to follow, but what we got to do is take a look at what we're going to do now. What we're going to do as a country, what Trump is going to do, what Biden is going to do. And here's the question that we're really going to get into today. If Biden orchestrated all of this, if he's behind the scenes pulling the strings, well, the real question is why? And I know where most people go when you think of that, which is, well, what do you mean why? He did it because he wants Trump to be convicted of a felony. It's like, well, okay, that's the surface, but the question that I have is kind of, what's his long game for this? And I'm asking that because, let's face it, here's what we understand today. Trump's been convicted. Trump can appeal. He may or may not win his appeal. It sounds like it's going to be hard for him to win his appeal, just given the scenario, given what he's charged with. But let's move past the appeal. Let's say that he appeals and the appeal doesn't change anything. It gets tossed out. Well, Trump's got a very good chance of not seeing any jail time at all. This is not a violent crime. He's a first-time offender. He was a former president. There are a whole lot of reasons why Trump will not see a jail cell. And I'm not saying he should. I'm just talking about kind of the facts. There are a lot of reasons why Trump will never see a jail cell. And even if he does see a jail cell, he might only do 3 months in jail, which means that from the time he goes into jail until the time he comes out, all he misses is some campaign time, and he's still able to campaign. He's still able to run as the Republican nominee. So when I'm saying, why would this happen, I'm saying, why would Biden orchestrate all of this, knowing that Trump is still going to run for the run as the Republican nominee? And that's part of what we're going to get into. But let me read some of the chats before we dive in, because this one's going to be juicy. Okay, so Thread says buck up and before because I never remember to do this, click like, click subscribe, and click the notification bell so you'll be notified when I do more pop-up lives. I try to do a pop-up live on Tuesday. This isn't the only time that I do pop-up lives, and I don't always make Tuesday shows. So if you are subscribed, you'll be alerted when shows happen. You can join in. Let me see. Thread, stop worrying about what other people think. Pick yourself up by the bootstraps, civilian. Okay, I'm not sure what you're talking about, Thread. Um, Dano's Junkyard Vlog. 34 counts times 4 years for each crime equals 136 years in prison. So Donnie is screwed hot. Um, well, I mean, yeah, 34 counts that could carry 4 years each, but that also could be sentenced to run concurrent. Means if he got hard time, his hard time might be 4 years. And I don't think that that's going to happen. Well, again, I don't think Trump is going to see a jail cell at all. And Greg Sutton is reiterating that point. He will not see a day in prison. I agree with you, Greg. I don't think he's going to see any prison time. And if he does, if by some weird stretch he does, I think it'll only be 3 months, and it's going to happen at a time where it won't impact his ability to run. That's what I think is going to happen. But as we dive in, some things that I'm curious to know. Donald Trump, the day after his conviction, did a presser from Trump Towers. It was interesting because I almost drove out there not drove, almost caught the bus over from New Jersey to New York to see it. I was just worried I wouldn't be able to get there in time. I'm glad I didn't go because when I saw the conference, the presser, I was looking at the audience and it looked like mainly just press. So maybe I'd have been able to film. I would have gone to try to film it, but I would have been on my phone. So I don't know that I would have gotten good footage. I would have probably been too far back to really pick it up. And that's what I was going to go to do, is be able to play it live. However, when I saw his press conference from Trump Tower the day after his conviction, I noticed something about Trump. Now, his press conference, he was hitting his major talking points, and he was pretty frustrated, which I understand. He'd been convicted. There was a lot that went into his conviction that he didn't feel was fair. He had witnesses that could give testimony that weren't allowed to give testimony. He was upset about that. And he's under a gag order where he can't really get into the details of his conviction the way he wants to. So Trump was very frustrated with kind of the whole process. But here was something that I was noticing about Trump during the Trump Tower press conference. This was one of the first times where I saw what seemed to be Trump visibly frustrated and visibly tired of everything that was going on. You could kind of see, it looked like Trump hadn't had a lot of sleep. It looked like Trump had been dealing with a lot of issues, which, it makes sense. But, normally Trump's got a lot of energy. Normally he's got a lot more energy when he's presenting. This is the first time that I saw him, kind of let us see that he was tired. And he wasn't as focused on his talking points. He was really talking about how annoyed he was with this whole process, with basically a witch hunt that was turning into this mountain of a case when it should have been adjudicated well before this, could have been dealt with several years earlier. No, it was a witch hunt. He was calling it a witch hunt, and he was tired of it. Part of what was interesting about this is this was another one of the scenarios where Trump wasn't presenting to a crowd. And Trump is a double-edged sword with his presentation styles, my take. Because I've seen Trump when he presents and he's got a crowd. When Trump's got a crowd, Trump is amazing at feeding off of crowd energy. He does a better job of feeding off of crowd energy than just about anybody I've seen. If you saw the press conference he did in the Bronx, I mean, he could kind of get a feel for when the crowd was sort of losing their steam, and he would pivot, switch to things. It kept him focused on the things that the crowd really cared about. So if he's talking about the problems that Biden is bringing to the country and the crowd was kind of losing interest, he's like, oh, okay, you want me to go positive, got it. And he would start talking about everything that he was doing that he was going to do or that he had done in the past to basically build America up. When Trump has a crowd, Trump can present an amazing speech. When Trump doesn't have the crowd, then you can see Trump, he can get lost on a topic. Like he got really focused on complaining about the case, and he wasn't spending as much time talking about kind of what he was going to do for America or what he was going to do to bounce back. And I think some of that was just he didn't have the crowd to react to. When he does, you would see him pivot. I'm building up to a point here, so there's a point to all of this. But keep in mind, so just keep that in mind, when Trump doesn't have the crowd, you see a difference in the way he presents. Because we can also look at Trump's CNN interview. If you didn't see this one, this is the one where everybody's, basically the whole story of his CNN interview has become Trump said that he didn't say lock Hillary up. Now, he said lock Hillary up. You can look at video of that. That's not the point. The point is Trump is doing an interview with, 3 CNN anchors, and he doesn't have a crowd. And when he's doing that interview, again, he's a little bit distracted. So they're asking him a lot of questions, and Trump is going to his major talking points. He talks about the economy, he talks about the open borders, talks about the wars. He's got major talking points he's always focusing on because those are the ones that he knows motivate his audience. But when he doesn't have the crowd, it's like he gets stuck on those, and sometimes as you're asking him about other things, he keeps going back to those major talking points. That was the one awkward thing in particular. Well, that was one of the awkward things about the CNN interview, is they were asking him about a couple of specific questions. Specific questions about, for example, the military and his thoughts on how to strengthen the military. And he would touch on it, but then he would pivot back to, Crooked Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, talking points that he knows do well, but talking points that didn't answer the questions that everyone was asking. Now let me see. Let's come back to some of these questions. Let me see. Yeah, we said he won't get jail for this trial. Seems like this one is meant to take up his time and money. We're going to talk about that, Lucas Drennan, because I agree with you, but I think there's a little bit more to it. Dano says, did Sutton predict the guilty verdict? Nope. Sutton is clueless. I don't know about that. I don't think Trump's going to jail. Donnie is begging to spend time in jail. I say give the convict what he wants. Well, okay, the country is divided on that. Half the country woke up the day after that conviction and they were excited. And the other half of the country woke up and they were ticked off. And we talked about that in the last live stream, because we did a live stream the night of the conviction, and I said, watch the poll numbers, because Trump's poll numbers are going to go up. And they have. There are a lot of people who don't agree with Trump's conviction. They've got pretty reasonable expectations here, which are the courts shouldn't be used for witch hunts, the courts shouldn't be used for political grandstanding. I think there are a whole lot of people who want to see the Biden versus Trump election actually take place in the ballot boxes and not in court. We want Trump versus Biden to be an issue that we make a decision about through election. We'll elect, everybody will cast their votes, we'll count them up. The guy who gets the most points wins. That's what a lot of people want to see, and right now there's a feeling that that's not really what's happening. Now that is going to be what happens, because I fully expect Trump to be able to run as a Republican nominee and Biden to be able to run as the Democratic nominee. But it doesn't feel like that's what's happening, because there's so much swirling around Trump right now that it feels like he might not get to run. However, rest assured, I am confident Trump is going to run as the Republican candidate Again, I don't think he's doing any jail time, but that's not a guarantee. I didn't think he was going to be found guilty. I was shocked by that. So we will see what happens, but I don't expect Trump to do any jail time. Dano's going to have a lot. It'll be obvious where Dano's heart lies on this issue. Does anyone understand why Donnie cannot hire a decent lawyer today? His trial lawyer was no better than Mickey Mouse. I don't know if Trump's trial lawyer was bad. Trump even said that he had great lawyers. Trump made the comment. He said I think he said something like Mother Teresa couldn't win this case. And this. Okay, let's take a big step back. If we're going to talk about the case, then let's just be honest. I think Trump slept with Stormy Daniels. I think that he paid her to keep quiet about it. And I think he cooked the books to send out the payment. I think all of that happened. The question is, do we think that the system was manipulated so that this would be turned into a federal crime, which meant that the sentence for Donald Trump changed from a misdemeanor to a serious felony that he could face prison time for? Do we think he was railroaded into this? I don't know many people who don't think he was railroaded into this. He made valid points. Why didn't they bring this trial up years ago? Why are they so focused on getting him now? And those are very fair questions. But we are where we are. I do think that there is a lack of confidence in the legal system and in the process right now because of where we are, and people saying, look, this is not the way that the presidential race is supposed to be run. This isn't the way people are supposed to campaign. They're supposed to win in the ballot box, not in court. So yeah, there's some issues here, and we're gonna have to figure out what to do to clean this up. And I know let me see. So Greg Sutton says Dano's name one of the 34 felonies he was convicted of. Does anyone understand why Donnie can? Oh, we did that. Yeah. Okay. I'll just call you Batty. Doesn't like Joe Biden. And there was only one federal indictment from Dan. Joel Neer's rap. Interesting. FEC already declared that they weren't able to prosecute on the 23rd, 2023. Yep. And it also says, of course, it's divided. Yeah. There are a lot of people who they only see their side of it. So Trump supporters only see the injustice here. Biden supporters only see Trump's criminal. They don't see any of the witch hunt aspects of this. And I try to be even with it. I do think it's a witch hunt. But I have to acknowledge, Trump wasn't innocent. Trump committed a crime. It's just how this got handled, how this elevated. That's what surprises me. Given the track record we have with presidents and infidelity, you do look and think, well, why is this one suddenly so serious when there are other issues, where there are other presidents with other indiscretions that weren't hammered on like this? Remember when you said Trump would not be the GOP nominee, Gene? I don't remember ever saying Trump wouldn't be the GOP nominee. Yeah. What are you talking about? I don't think I ever said Trump won't be the GOP nominee. So no, I don't remember that. You'll have to explain that to me. Now, I have said that if Trump goes to jail, if he goes to jail and he spends a lot of time in jail, then he won't be the GOP nominee. Yeah, if you give him 4 years in jail, he won't be the GOP nominee. Sure, can't be. He won't be able to serve. He'll be in jail. But as I'm saying, I don't think he's going to jail. So no, you'll have to be more specific about what you think I said there. Because that's, yeah, you're misquoting me. It ain't hard to figure out what they're doing. They pulled everybody's heartstrings, made them hate a man irrationally by manipulating the media everywhere so that they can get the outcome they want. Um, hmm. Okay, so yes and no. I think they had a clear cut case. Trump sleeping with Stormy Daniels, that was a clear cut case. I don't think you had to. I don't think you had to do much to convict him of this. It's just it's the conviction itself. It's like I don't. It's not the legal process. It's more the fact that this was brought up in the first place, and that's where you say, well, why are you bringing this up now? Why did if this was such an issue, why didn't you bring this up 6 years ago, 7 years ago? What took all this time? Um, that's where it gets weird, and that's where you have to look at someone and say, you're going to have to explain to me how I shouldn't look at this as a witch hunt, given that you waited until Trump is campaigning to drop this bombshell and all these other bombshells on him. This isn't the only case Trump is dealing with. Some of the cases he's dealing with are more timely. For now, like the secured documents case, that it makes sense that that one's being adjudicated now, just given when things happen. And Joe Biden was dealing with some of this. But this one, no, I don't. I don't see how you can pass the honesty test for this just being random because it doesn't feel like it was. Um, this way, they can have legal precedent to violate his First, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, and 10th Amendment rights. Okay, I'm gonna have to, yeah, to violate all of his. So violate his rights. The gag order is the gag order. I would say the one thing that's difficult here for Trump is the gag order because he can't talk about the case and the situation the way he wants to. And I saw when he did his um, presser from Trump Tower the day after, he was really bothered by the fact that he's got a gag order and that he can't talk about the details of the case the way he wants to. Um, but he's honoring the gag order. Um, it's a very strange issue, and honestly, I think that he and his legal team are going to have to sit down and figure out kind of their strategy. Now, the first thing I'm going through if I'm them is, I'm looking at the appeal. Are we going to run this appeal or not? Looking at the way they would try to file the appeal, the only things they can really appeal are a couple of procedural things. Like they can try to attack the judge and say he wasn't impartial. They can try to attack a couple of things, but they don't have a lot from an appeal standpoint. So I think they will appeal. I don't think the appeal is going to work. So that's the point where they have to start getting into what sentencing is going to look like and what they're going to do in response. And for the most part, I think that they're going to approach it by saying, look, it's unlikely you're going to get jail time. The judge, Juan Merchan, is not known for giving harsh sentences. He's generally pretty straightforward about his sentencing recommendations. So the idea that Trump is a first-time offender, this is not a violent crime, he's a president, all of that's going to factor in. The only thing that could potentially hurt him is if he goes through the appeal process and he's arrogant. My understanding is that they do look at you when you're going through the appeal process, and if you're arrogant and you're basically calling the judge and everybody morons, well, then that won't bode well for you. But Trump's not an idiot. He's observing the gag order. I think he's going to go in there and he's going to treat the appeal process seriously. And yeah, if he doesn't have a huge fumble there, then I think he's coming out of this with a conviction. Maybe he gets house arrest, maybe, but I don't even know if he'd get that, honestly. I think he gets convicted and he gets time served and he goes right on with his life, but now he's a felon. And we're going to come back to why all of these steps are there. Wrath is a parrot. He repeats the lies of small-minded Republicans from Fox News. I don't know that he's lying. I don't know that what he's. Well, I haven't heard Fox News say that Trump's. I haven't heard them say that Trump's rights have been violated and get into specific things. And I do think that the gag order is impacting his ability to campaign. So I can see the rationale for someone saying, "Look, I don't really like the way this is happening." Joelner's wrath. No, I repeat, historical value and repetition that has occurred many times with this kind of welfare taking place. This kind of welfare. So we're saying that this is welfare for Biden. Okay. I mean, this is, yeah, I think this helps Biden. This definitely helps Biden. This is going to get into how it helps Biden. We're going to come back to. Let me try to catch up on the comments, and then I can come back to that aspect of the story. Check out your recent vlog, Gene. On a live stream, you said Trump will not be the GOP nominee. Look, Dan, if I said Trump will not be the GOP nominee, and I said it in the context of if he goes to jail, he will not be the GOP nominee, yeah, I said that. We were saying I said he won't be the GOP nominee. You will have to show me something timestamp that says I said that, because I don't believe that. I don't think that, and I don't think I've ever said that. So yeah, show me a timestamp. Dano and Wrath are going at it. I know Dano always gets into it with somebody. If you read or hear something, believe it isn't. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's the pro and anti-Trump fight is always going to happen in the comment section. So let me move and let me see what else we've got, and then we'll come back to the story. Let me see. El Locachon, the big homie milk dud. Oh, okay. Trolling. Yeah, we get trolled. I know that part. All right. Let me see. And we got Gubby Fish, John 3:16. Okay. All right. So let's come back to the fallout from the Trump conviction. Now, on the one hand, Trump has the conviction to deal with. On the other hand, Trump has clearly shown that he's still got a strong base of support. Trump raised Trump's war chest has grown as a result of his conviction and him appealing to his base to help him fund his appeal process and to fight for the presidency. I think his numbers have jumped from what was like 34 billion immediately after to 54 billion, and I've heard the latest count I heard was that the donations to the Trump campaign following the outcome have been $200 million. So he's been able to show that he's still got a substantial amount of support. He started a TikTok page. He's advertising on Truth Social, but TikTok's clearly got a bigger subscriber base than Truth Social, so smart move moving to TikTok, and he's starting to use TikTok to get his message out. So there's been a lot that's happened since the conviction that shows that Trump still has a lot of support. The polls show support. I don't put too much weight into the polls, but I recognize that the polls are interesting to read. Trump's numbers being up in the polls, that was expected. After Trump's conviction, Trump's base is ticked off, and they've got more reason to want to respond if there's a pollster than Biden's camp, who's pretty much just going to remain the same. So yeah, I expect Trump's poll numbers to go up. And then Lucas Drennan. Welcome in, Lucas and Joe Mack. Lucas Drennan says, what's your thoughts on Trump's 2016 election interference conviction? Does it make it easier to prove 2020 interference in the next trial? Well, tell me what you mean, Lucas, because Trump's interference conviction is not about um, ballots being miscounted or anything like that. His interference is basically misrepresenting himself to voters. That's the way that that's going. So that doesn't have anything to do with voters being double counted or any of that. So I don't think 2016 does anything to help or harm people's perceptions of the validity of 2020. Um, but then we get Joe Mack, who says it's even more funny when I see the Southern boys, how much to support they give to that Yankee up there in New York. Uh, well, that goes back to, that's not so much about where he's from. That's just parties. Southern states generally vote Democrat. Northern states and coastal states generally vote. Southern states generally vote Republican. Northern states and coastal states generally vote Democrat. So it doesn't matter where he's from. He's the Republican nominee, so he's going to get those votes. He's going to get, he's going to get the South. He's going to get the Heartland. Question is, does he, who gets those swing states? Let me see. For one, the payments took place in 2017 after the election. That's not my. Well, I guess I'll have to go back because I thought the whole point of this was that the payments. Well, okay, when the payment hits, one thing. When the entries were made into the books, that was my understanding is that was a 2016 event. That's what triggered it. The events happened before he was running, before he was elected, and that's why it was an issue. If this all happened after he got elected, then if I'm him, I'm going to say, tell me why what I'm doing is any different than what Bill Clinton is doing, and sleeping with an intern and trying to cover it up. I would have approached the case entirely differently. Yes, it does, Lucas. With Donnie trying to create another, let me see, that got cut off. Another insurrection, it will make it easier to convict him in Georgia. Logically, how is something that is done after, keeps cutting off, after you're elected, election interference? I would rather be a constitution, yeah, okay. So now we're back to those two. All right. So I'm just going to let Dano and Raph just duke it out in the comment section. And Lucas is saying his conviction established that he has the capacity to interfere with elections. Will it make it easier to prove in the election interference? Well, it's not so much, all right. Election interference. So we're approaching that as election interference. Fine. Yes. He will now have a track record of election interference, but he doesn't have a track record of miscounting votes. Now you can't just say, well, you lied about something, you covered something up so that you could run in 2016. That doesn't automatically mean you covered something up so that you could run in 2020. Those are two different events. It's kind of like saying, you lied on your resume to get the job, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you've lied since you've been hired to get promoted. Those are two different things. So I don't think that the one is going to impact the other. But let's kind of talk about the election and why I think this conviction is what I think is really behind the conviction, because I do think it's interesting. Now, first we have to. Let's approach this approach it very rationally here. Trump's not a dumb guy. Biden's not a dumb guy. They call each other idiots all the time. Those are their talking points. But these are two smart guys, so they're thinking steps ahead. And what you have to do is think about like this and the chess moves and ask the question, why did all of this happen? What are the chess moves that Biden was trying to put forth when he, basically helped to get this whole thing in motion? And I want to talk about something that I thought about that helped me to shed some light on what I think is going on here. Now, I won't say who I work for, but I work for a large company. I've worked for large companies all my life. And I once worked for a company that got sued. Now, why we got sued was because we ran an ad campaign, and everything that we said in our everything that we said in our ad, this was on television, national TV. Everything we said was accurate. It was legitimate, but people were confused about what we were saying. I mean, for me to kind of paint a picture of like the difference between what we said and what people heard, we had a product, and what we were basically telling people was, look, if you have a problem and you fix the problem, use our product and you won't have to deal with the problem again. Like, we keep the problem from coming back. So that was our ad, and that was true. Now what people heard was we solved the problem, and that's not what we said, and that's not the case. So a lot of people started buying our product because they thought it solved the problem. We're like, wait a minute. People are, I did the analysis to say, oh, people don't understand what we just said. They think we said we solve a problem. They didn't hear us say, no, we keep it from coming back. So we knew, okay, people don't understand the ad, and we need to get a new ad on air. We got to fix this. Well, generally you don't just take the first ad off the air until you've got a new ad to replace it with, because you don't. In the business, that's called going dark, and you don't want to go dark because if you don't have advertising on air, you don't sell stuff. So we're trying to figure out how to make a new ad. Well, we got sued because one of our competitors who did fix the problem was saying, you're lying in your ad. People are misunderstanding what you're saying, and we're going to sue you. And it's very interesting because they didn't know that we were already planning to take the ad off the air. But once they sued us, everything changed. Now the attitude was, wait a minute, you're suing us? Well, okay, maybe we were going to take this ad off the air, but we're not going to let you tell us when we're taking the ad off the air. Everything changed. And what we did was we had a legal team walk in and explain to us the whole process. They said, look, they sent you a cease and desist letter. You got 30 days to respond to it. Then they'll send you another letter, and then you got 30 days to respond to that. And then it goes to court. They told us the district where our case was probably going to get tried. They told us the judges that were potentially going to be trying the case. And kind of said, look, if you go in on these dates, it's probably, there were like 3 judges. If you go in on these dates, it's probably one of these 2. If you go in on those dates, it's probably one of these other 2. And these judges are more favorable for you, and these judges are worse. I mean, we knew all of the steps all the way through. And this was like a year before we ever got to court. So when you talk about the pieces, we knew every single step. And the reason I'm bringing that up is Biden's orchestrating this. You have to ask, what's the next step that's coming? Because right now Trump's been convicted. But I mean, so what? Trump doesn't go to jail. Trump's still the Republican nominee. Like, what's the point? Why do you go through all of this just to say he's convicted? And that's where I think that this really gets into the chess match. Because let's think about something that's coming up. Trump and Biden are about to have their first debate on CNN Atlanta later this month. And here's what I think we're dealing with. This debate is very different than the debates in the past. Sure, the timing's been moved up, but the format has changed. The format has changed to something that's actually a disadvantage to Trump, because Biden and Trump are going to be in a studio, no audience. They've got mics that can be silenced, and this is going to be a much more academic debate than we've seen before. Now, why is that important? Well, let's remember, Trump's biggest strength seems to be the crowd. Trump gets energy off the crowd. Put Trump in front of a crowd, he's hard to beat in a debate, because he can use that crowd energy to focus himself. If he's giving a point, it's not as exciting. He can respond to the crowd quicker than anybody else I've seen. And he keeps the crowd engaged. And that's why he comes off so well in his speeches, is because his speeches are designed to motivate the crowd. But when Trump doesn't have a crowd, that's when his speeches take a very different tone. When Trump doesn't have the crowd, he goes back to talking points. He really stays on a couple of major talking points. He talks about open borders. He talks about the economy. He doesn't necessarily focus on the questions that he's asked. He always brings it back to his talking points. So Trump can look more distracted when he doesn't have a crowd because he doesn't have that energy to redirect him. And the more frazzled he is with everything that he's trying to keep track of, the easier it is to keep him unfocused and to have him look like he's getting frustrated. And imagine you've got Trump in a debate and he's got a microphone and he's only got 2 minutes and he's being asked a question, and after 2 minutes he's being shut off. And maybe he's trying to get to a major talking point while he's trying to answer a question, but he's also distracted by his conviction, and he's got a lot of things he wants to talk about, but he doesn't really have the room to pivot to all of the things that he wants to say. I think that this is all orchestrated to put him in a very bad position for the debate. Now, you can say that that's kind of a crazy idea, but let's ask this. What's crazier? Somebody wanted to get Trump convicted of something that they knew he wasn't going to go to jail for. Like, what's the point? Somebody wanted to get Trump convicted so that he's distracted when he's going on these debates and he looks bad. And that impacts his ability to get voted for. Now I'm pretty straightforward. I always say, straightforward, straight lines make sense. So A leads to B leads to C, I get. A leads to F. It's like, well, wait a minute. Now you skip too many steps. This is going to make the debate even harder for Trump because now he's going to be distracted by a lot of things. And now he's got a gag order. I don't know if the gag order will still, actually it should still hold through the first debate. Maybe not the second, but through the first debate, I think the gag order will still be in place. So he's distracted, and he doesn't have his crowd, and he doesn't have a lot of time. I can see him not coming across well in the first debate because he's got too many things that he's trying to juggle in his mind, and he doesn't have enough time to really sort through all those things in the debate format. And he doesn't have the crowd to help keep him focused. I think that this is I think that the first debate might not go well for him because he's going to be so distracted by all of this. That's what I think is going on. Feel free to disagree, but that's linear. I mean, that's the points connecting. If Biden's pulling this off, you've got to ask, what's the point? And I don't think the point was just get him convicted when he's not going to jail so that I can say he's a convict. I mean, so what? His poll numbers are up. So just saying he's a convict does not help you. Biden would do something that helped him, and Biden's team would have walked through all of the pivots that the case could take so that he can look at outcomes and say, this is where I think things are going. I had a legal team walk me through that, and what I dealt with was just a very simple corporate case. One big company sues another big company. That kind of stuff happens all the time, and they walked us through all of the details of what to expect. I don't believe that Biden wouldn't have had a similar conversation with lawyers who were far better at dealing with this than our lawyers were. Let me get back to the chat for a second. So the only thing I'm concerned about is the legal precedent that is now being set that is using Trump as a scapegoat and your emotionally tied cognitive dissonance. No, yeah, so that's okay. They're going back, and that's him and Dan. Rule of law: rights gained by one are gained by all. Rights lost by one are lost by all. Okay, so we're still going. Dano's predicting a blue wave, which I still don't agree with. I don't think there's a blue wave. I don't think there's a blue wave. I don't think there's a red wave. I think 44 states are going to vote the same way they have in the last two elections. And I think six states that swung between 2016 and 2020, I think 6 states are going to determine the 2024 election. I don't think all the other states are at play for the Democrats or the Republicans. I just don't believe that. And specifically, I don't even think all 6 states are in play, because I think Georgia is already going to go to Trump, and I think Pennsylvania is already going to go to Biden. So Michigan, whoever wins Michigan may be the president, which means at 8 o'clock on election night, sit down and watch who gets Michigan. And whoever wins Michigan is going to win the election. If everything else goes the way it did in the last 2 elections, which means that Biden is going to win New England, Trump is going to win the Southeast. If that all goes the way it's expected, and Trump takes Georgia and Biden takes Pennsylvania, yeah, just watch Michigan. Whoever gets Michigan, you're like, okay, more states have to get called, but it no longer matters, because we already know how the rest of those states are largely going to go, and whoever gets Michigan is going to have 270 electoral votes, and that's the ballgame. So we will see. Dano is saying Trump will never debate. I don't agree with that. Trump will debate. I don't think that this format is going to help. I don't think his debate is going to go as well as he might like, because this format and all of these distractions are going to work against him. Him having to answer a question in 2 minutes, and him wanting to talk about his major talking points, wanting to talk about his conviction, and wanting to answer the question that was asked. Yeah, I think all of that's going to be really hard for him to do. And remember, Trump's approach to debates, it's pretty straightforward. He generally talks about what his opponents have failed to do, what he's planning to do, or what he's done in the past that leads to success. So you kind of know how he wants to explain an issue, but that can take time. And if you're also trying to suddenly talk about your conviction, or talk about a gag order, or if you're stuck with those sorts of things as well, which I think Trump can get distracted by if he doesn't have the crowd to kind of focus him, then I think that makes it harder for him. Orchestrated by who? Where's your evidence? Okay, so be the first to admit, there is no evidence. There is zero evidence to say this was orchestrated by anybody like Biden. There is absolutely nothing to prove it. And I'm definitely not saying I can't. But I am saying this. I don't think it's a coincidence that all of these trials are happening at the same time during a campaign. So all of them happening at the same time now, yeah, that feels coordinated. Nobody's going to convince me otherwise on that. You're just not. Whether you ignore that or don't believe that, that's a separate issue. But yeah, the timing of this is not a coincidence. It's entirely fair. Now, on the one hand, it's entirely fair to say, look, if you've committed these crimes and you get caught, you get caught. And I'm not going to argue that either. You know what? If you didn't commit the acts, there wouldn't be, you wouldn't have to deal with court cases. But it's fair to say, acts committed or not, all having it hit at the same time, that's not a coincidence. So let's not pretend like this just all kind of happened at random. This feels like political maneuvering. It's definitely going to hurt Trump's ability to focus on his talking points. For good or for bad, it is what it is. He did commit crimes that led him to this. But yeah, if it wasn't Trump, I don't think the legal processes would have played out the way they have. Sutton and I knew Dano was self-serving. Okay. So yeah, we've got a lot. Okay, you guys are just going to go back and forth on your pro or anti-Trump stances. That is what it is. And click like. I don't remember if I said. So yeah, click like and subscribe if you're enjoying the content, so that as I do more pop-up lives, you will be notified of them. And let me go. Hang on one second. So, Trump's convicted. Trump's going through the legal process, and now we're doing all of these post-conviction interviews. One of the interviews was interesting. And I'll admit, so Biden does a presser, and he talks about essentially the rule of law being followed and nobody being above the law. And I do agree with that. I don't think anybody should be above the law. You commit a crime, I don't care if you're a peon or a president. If you commit a crime, yeah, you deserve to go through the legal process. But if something's a misdemeanor and everybody else is being given kind of recognition for only having committed a misdemeanor, I don't think that because you're a president, it should be elevated in your case. Like, that's not really fair. And it feels like some of that's going on here. So, like, processing, yeah. Grandstanding, yeah. I don't separate the two. Everybody's getting, there's guilt on both sides, but ultimately, this is potentially keeping the vote out of voters' hands, and I don't like that. I want voters to decide who should or shouldn't be president, not the courts. However, Biden did his post-conviction presser, and it's kind of he's going rule of law. He's been very, very safe with his talking points, very predictable. And they go off into this weird thing. They're talking about, ooh, did you see Biden's evil smile? And I thought that was pretty dumb. That was mainly, there were a couple of different networks that were talking about this. I feel like that's getting blown completely out of proportion. For perspective, if you didn't see it, Biden gives his presser and he's walking off. And this reporter asks him a question, and he kind of turns and he just smiles, and then he keeps on walking. And everybody, the reporter was asking him basically if this was a coordinated attack. Essentially, what she was saying is this a coordinated attack on Donald Trump? And are you happy about the outcome? And Biden kind of looks and smiles, and people feel like he's smiling because he's happy about the outcome, and they're saying, ooh, that's so evil. But I was like, that's not what I'm seeing at all. This reporter just asked him a really stupid question. Like, do you think that Biden is going, let's say hypothetically, Biden personally coordinated every step of this. I don't think it goes that far, but let's say for the sake of argument, he personally coordinated everything. He's not going to admit that in an interview. Some reporter fires a silly question like that at him, like, ooh, will you admit that you personally played a hand in all of this? Like, he looked back and smiled because he was looking at that reporter and thinking, you're a moron. And he wanted to see her face. This is my take. He wanted to see her face because he wanted to say, the next time I'm doing a presser, who's the reporter who I'm not going to give a chance to ask me any questions? So he was building a mental image like, oh, you're the one who asked me that dumb question. Thanks for asking it. You just made it really easy for me to understand who I am not going to help out. So that reporter, yeah, if she starts getting frozen out on subsequent interviews, I won't be surprised, and it'll be her own fault because I felt like that was a really stupid question for me to ask, for her to ask. We'll see, but this whole notion that Biden is somehow laughing insidiously on camera in front of the whole nation about what just happened to Donald Trump, that's just silly. It would be stupid for him to do that. And I think both Biden and Trump I think they're both smart guys. They've got different motivations. They've got different ways of approaching the election. But anybody who thinks that they're dumb really doesn't understand what they're facing. So that was the one thing I wanted to bring up on that. Now, part of what we're going to have to think about, for Trump is the sequence of events. Because the way I see it, he's going to appeal, and then he's going to go to his debate with Biden, And then very shortly after that, he's going to um, get his sentencing. And we don't know for sure what's going to happen from there, because that's where everything starts to depend on what happens. I do think that the appeal is going to happen and the appeal is going to fail. Just given what I've seen, I don't see how the appeal can work. Trying to go after some procedural things. The things they're trying to appeal are things that they would have gotten the case reassigned or moved to a new location before it ever happened. Like those, I just don't see how you're going to appeal. I don't see how you're going to win an appeal given the kinds of procedural things they're going after. So the appeal's not going to work. And then I really think that the debate between Biden and Trump isn't going to go well for Trump, only because he's going to be distracted by everything. And when you look, take a good hard look at how Trump has been responding to interviews when he doesn't have a crowd following the conviction. The conviction is weighing on him. I don't know if you saw there were some images, kind of the screen grabs that CNN was using, Fox News was using to advertise these interviews. And those were the first times that I've really seen Trump look tired and look frustrated. And I get it. You've got this conviction hanging over your head. You've got a lot of things that you're trying to deal with. He admitted that he's had people who would ask, how do you do it? How do you keep going through all of this? But this is the first time that I've seen it like visibly wearing on him. And that just tells me that, you're going to have to go into this debate, and I don't know if you're going to be as focused as you normally want to be, because you got too many things on your mind. And you can you can see it when he's answering the questions. He wants to get into so many different things that he gets asked one question and he starts going off on a lot of different things that he wants to talk about. I don't think that that's going to work as well when he gets to debate one. Now, my expectation is that he's going to go through the debate, he's going to go to sentencing, and he's not going to get any jail time. I don't think he's going to get jail time. I don't think he's going to get house arrest. His conviction will stand, but that's really immaterial. So then we've got the Republican National Convention that'll come up after that. He will formally be the Republican candidate, and we get to the election. Now, once we get to that point, things will be very interesting. Because now we have to ask the question, does Trump's conviction have any impact on his ability to win the presidency? Now, honestly, I don't think so. If Trump's a convicted felon or not, if he's not locked up, he can run. He still has his base. He still has all of the people who support him. Biden still basically has all of the people who support him. This is still going to boil down to those swing states, and it's still going to boil down to who does a better job of campaigning in the swing states. The only thing that I think would really hurt Trump in any of this is if he is on house arrest or something like that for 3 months. Doesn't impact his ability to run, but that would mean that he can't get out there and campaign for essentially 3 of the last months of campaigning before the election. That could hurt. I think that could hurt him. He can send other people, but it's nothing like having the guy come to your state to campaign. Trump hasn't elected his vice president yet, but he mentioned in the Fox interview that vice presidents don't actually do that much to help presidents win. Maybe they help you carry a state that you were vulnerable in, but Trump's comments were essentially he has to campaign. He has to get out there and he has to convince voters that he's the right choice. If he's out of the off the campaign trail for 3 months, yeah, I think that will have an impact. That could have a really big impact. Don't think it's going to happen, but have to acknowledge that's a risk. That's a real risk. I think that if Trump got jail time 3 months on house arrest seems more likely than 4 years. And 3 months on house arrest, yeah, that could be very destructive. Um, Let me catch up on some of the comments. Let me see. Stormy, not Story, but who knows? I don't know if what is Story? Stormy. If Stormy was a blonde, he might. Okay. Uh, Greg Sutton, thank you, sir, for your commentary. Thank you, Sutton, for your subscribing and liking. I appreciate that. Um, the roofer on two. The roofer on. Okay, I'm not sure. I'm not sure which way you're going with that. Is that like, are you trying to make that a baseball thing on sec? I don't know what you mean with your name. It looks like he's talking to Dano. Can't believe you beat for Biden. We already know what is going to happen. I need a keyboard with bigger keys. Okay. He keeps getting caught committing crimes. Let me see. This guy is a backpack for Biden. I know Dano is going to be very anti-Trump, so I already know that in the chat. Gene, imagine you're a judge for a second. How many times does a defendant get to slap your face before you send him to jail? Think about it. It's called common sense. I don't agree with that, Dano. What Trump did that Merchan could take personally, Trump did make some comments about the judge's daughter, because he said that the judge's daughter was trying to profit off of the fact that her dad was presiding over the case. The judge's daughter she's got like a political think tank, and she has Democratic clients. So Trump felt like that could be seen as impartiality. But that's not Merchan, that's his daughter. And I understand Merchan saying, hey, don't talk about my kid. I don't want my kid involved in this, stop hitting below the belt. But he put the gag order on Trump, and Trump recognized the gag. Trump has complied with the gag order. So, no, I don't think that Merchan is going to want revenge, and that would be impartial to begin with. Merchan doesn't have a track record for just dishing out harsh sentences to people. So I don't see why Merchan is suddenly going to decide to dish out a harsh sentence here. That's not his MO. And Merchan throughout this case has pretty much gone by his MO. So by his MO, the most I think Trump would look at is 3 months, which could be 3 months of house arrest. And I don't think he's going to get that. I think he's serving, if you want to quote me, you want to say these are the things I say, what I'm saying is, I think Trump is going to get 0 time in jail. And I don't think he's going to get house arrest. Now, I'm less confident about that part than I am about him not getting any jail time. But yeah, I don't think he's going to do 1 day in jail. Even if Trump is in jail, he could still be president. So, well, I'm not sure. Well, let's talk about, right? Let's say Trump, that's the roofer. Let's say Trump gets 4 years. Trump's going to get sentenced before the Republican National Convention. If Trump gets 4 years, no, that's it. He's not going to be the Republican nominee if he won't be able to serve as president. If he gets 3 months, that's different. Yeah, as long as he doesn't get 4 years, yeah, I agree that he can still run. I think the point is, I don't think he's going to be the nominee if he's in jail when the election happens. But I do think he's going to be the nominee if he might be in jail and coming out of jail before the election happens. Trump campaigns and gets booed. President Biden keeps getting treated like a rock star. Trump gets booed. I mean, the only time I've seen Trump get booed, Trump got booed at the Libertarian National Convention when he did that. But that was everybody. Well, let me not say everybody. I knew Trump was going to get booed at the Libertarian National Convention, but let's face it, that's the Libertarian National Convention. They don't like Trump and they don't like Biden. So yeah, they're going to boo Trump. They boo Biden too. neither of those two candidates were going to come out of that situation without getting some boos. That's just how it is. I didn't hear Trump getting booed at Wildwood. I didn't hear Trump getting booed when he did the Bronx. Now there were protesters, but in his crowd, nope, I didn't hear Trump getting booed. Generally, the people who show up to your rally are people who support you or are interested in hearing what you have to say. So I wouldn't expect to see a candidate getting booed at their own rally. That'd be kind of shocking if you got booed at your own rally. But what I will say is, and this goes back to when Trump is frustrated. Trump said one thing at the Libertarian National Convention that I thought, that wasn't a good thing to say. You know, he's doing his talking points, all of that. But basically, he got booed by the Libertarians, and he hit them with a fact that they didn't want to hear. Where he basically said, look, do you want to vote for me and vote for a winner, or do you want to keep sending your 3% vote to some candidate who has no chance? Now, he was frustrated with them for booing, and so he just let that rip. And that was an honest assessment. Him saying, look, if you vote Libertarian, you're voting for someone who will not win the presidency. So why are you wasting your vote? I think that's a fair question to ask. I think it's also fair for them to cast their vote for whoever they want. But when he was frustrated, he just let Libertarians have it on that point. And yeah, he got more boos when he told them that they're voting for a loser. That's just human nature. But it did kind of get into this whole thing of, you know, when Trump doesn't have his crowd energy to feed off, you know, if he's got negative energy, I got to see that he kind of feeds off that too. So for the second debate, I wonder if they're going to keep that format. I don't know if they're locked into, well, they may be locked in. If I'm Team Trump and the first debate doesn't go well, I would really start to argue that I want the second debate to go back to the original format. Like, we can move the time up, but I want the audience, and I don't want these mics that can be muted. I don't want any of that. I don't want any of the stuff that potentially hurts my ability to present my case the way I want to. So that would be me. Yeah, Danny was talking about the if Trump's in jail. That's the thing. If Trump has to serve significant time, he won't be president. But I don't think Trump's going to have to serve significant time. I don't think he's going to have to serve any time. Trump and, who is this? Frank White. Welcome, Frank White. Trump and NBA Youngboy need to go on house arrest together. NBA Youngboy is a rapper, but I don't know his story. Greg Sutton, agreed with you, agreed 100% with you, no jail. Yeah, I think the people who are saying Trump is going to jail, you know, are anti-Trump and they just want Trump in jail, but they're not actually looking at the facts. At best, Donnie gets 4 months in jail, then 10 years federal probation. Nope, I don't think that's going to happen. And it's not 4 months, from what I understand. 4 months, 3 months, not that big a difference. Although 4 months and it's only 1 month, but yeah, that could be the difference between winning the election from in jail versus not. 4 months versus 3 months, he's still going to be the Republican nominee. 4 years versus 3 months, different story. But yeah, I'm not going to believe that until I see it. Danos, he's forgotten more about politics than everyone here combined. Good for you, but that doesn't change the fact that at the end of the day, you're just one vote, just like everybody else. And what this boils down to is, what do voters believe? And yeah, I think that Trump supporters still support him. Biden supporters still support him. They're going to have to battle it out for the swing states. None of that has changed. Dr. Sigrid, God bless Trump. Dano with more Heil Trump, the GOP Fuhrer. God is not, okay. Okay, so we got the guys going. pro-Trump, anti-Trump. They are still going at it. So let's think about, Dr. Cigarette says, I support Trump. See, now, here's the thing. Here's the thing that's funny. I don't think that this conviction has really changed anybody's mind. I think that if you were pro-Trump before, you're pro-Trump now. If you were anti-Trump before, you're anti-Trump now. This may have made your feelings more intense for your candidate. Like, you thought Trump was a 10 before, now you think he's an 11. But basically, you're a Trumper or you're an anti-Trumper, and that hasn't changed. What I've seen, it's kind of funny, because a lot of people were starting to comment and respond to questions like that on different shows. And you would see a lot of people who were basically saying, oh, this is the last straw. I was a Democrat, and now I'm going to be a Republican. Oh, this is the last straw. I just can't vote for him now. I'm switching over to Democrat. A lot of people would say that in chats, but they were lying. Because if you look at someone who said, well, now I'm going to be Republican, you can actually look at people's chat history. You click on that, you can actually go see what they're saying. And when you look at their chat history, it's like, wait a minute, you've always been a Republican. This wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back and converted you. You're a lifelong Republican, and you're just kind of misrepresenting what's going on. Same thing for people who converted to Democrat. Like, you were always a Democrat. This didn't convert you. You're just saying that you're crossing party lines. I haven't seen a lot of people who said that they're crossing party lines as a result of this. People are still entrenched in what they believe in and who they want. The thing we got to remember is people who love Trump love Trump. And Trump's conviction is one more reason to love Trump, because now he's becoming a martyr. People who hate Trump hate Trump. Trump's conviction gives one more reason for them to hate him, because now he's a ne'er-do-well who continues to do things wrong. That doesn't really change for people. There are people in the middle, and really it's people in the middle in 6 states that are going to decide things. But for the most part, Trump's still basically Trump. Biden's still basically Biden. So it's going to come down to, what are you going to do to help me feed my family? That's going to be what decides this. And the debates and the campaign trail in the next couple of months are just as important as they've always been, because somebody's got to figure out how to win Michigan and Wisconsin in particular. But if they can't take both of them, then maybe they can focus on Arizona. And I think Trump has a little more work to do in Michigan, just because Joe Biden's already been in there standing on a picket line a few years ago. So Trump's got to go in, and he's got to do something to overshadow what Joe Biden did on those picket lines. If he's not able to get on the campaign trail, that's going to really hinder it. If he is, then we're going to have to see. Let me see what's going on with the chat. Dr. Cigarette, I support Trump. Dano, I support the U.S. Constitution, never a protector of Putin. Brian Phillips, hi. Brian, welcome to the show. If you've got thoughts, feel free to chime in. As you can see, we've got a very lively chat. We've got pro-Trump, pro-Biden. Both sides are encouraged to comment on this. I try to get to issues. If people want to fight back and forth, I try not to get too much into the bicker back and forth, but to the questions and like where things are going. Yeah, we want to tackle that. Dano says, Gene thinks people do not think differently about anyone once they become a convict. Who needs common sense, right? All right. Here's my question to you, Dan. All right. Let's talk about something that's obvious. Trump gets convicted, and then he shows his ability to raise a lot of campaign funds right after that. Trump gets convicted, and his poll numbers go up right after that. Those data points don't tell me that people are thinking negatively about him now when they were thinking positively about him before. Those data points tell me that people are rallying behind Trump. Now, I don't get too caught up in polls or newscasts or any of that, but I do get caught up in what people do. People's behavior is a very good predictor of what, if I see you have a track record of doing something, I do believe that, yeah, you're going to keep doing what you've always done. And what I see is people who have a track record of supporting Trump are still supporting Trump. People who have a track record of hating Trump are still hating Trump. That's not changing. I haven't seen anything to suggest that that is going to change. And I don't think it will. 6 states will determine the election. I haven't seen anything happen that is an indicator that that's not still the case. Now let me see. Hello, Brian. Trump or Biden or third party, we never know. Dana says, I'm neither a Republican nor a Democrat. I'm a Constitution supporting conservative. I do not hate Trump. I just have no use for the convict, LOL. Dr. Cigarette, Dano is a liberal. I actually know Dano's backstory, but it's not, if he wants to get into his backstory, I'll let him do that in chat. Dano, never forget who told you first. Blue wave, sure as Trump is a Putin supporter. Yeah, we have to agree to disagree. Never forget who told you first. Dano has blue wave disease. Okay. I'm going to be careful with that term. So I hear what you're saying, Dr. Cigarette. I just don't know how the YouTube search filters treat that term, so I'll be careful. Let me see. Curious. Okay. MAGA is indeed scared. Okay. So yeah, let's just take a look at the chat. Is there anybody in the chat who's going to cross party lines as a result of this? Is there anybody in the chat who changed their opinion about who they're voting for because of Trump's conviction? I doubt it. If somebody in the chat's changing their mind, okay, type it in. Let's see. But I have yet to see people really say that they're changing their mind legitimately. The only ones I see changing their mind are people who are lying. Because again, I go to their chats, I look at their chat history, and if they say that they're crossing over to Republican, it's a lie. They've always been a Republican. If they say they're crossing over to Democrat, it's a lie. They've always been a Democrat. They just want to suggest that they're crossing party lines, but it's not true. I haven't seen people actually do that. And I don't think we will. I just don't. A couple of other things have been interesting since then. Trump has been talking about one of Trump's talking points. I understand why he's doing it, but I don't think it's necessarily as strong an issue as he's bringing about. Trump talks about the wars, and he essentially says that if he's elected president, the wars will end immediately. I think that he can end the Ukraine war a lot faster than he can end the conflict in Gaza, just because Ukraine's not going to beat Russia. I don't know anyone who believes that at this point. And the general sentiment is that the money that we're pouring into Ukraine is wasted because Ukraine cannot win that war. And that's where it starts to boil down to this issue of we made a commitment to support them financially, and so we're doing it. Or we decide, this money's wasted, and so we're pulling the support. If Trump is in office, I think he'll pull the Ukraine support, and it will end the war because Ukraine is they cannot continue to fight without U.S. funding. But whether they have the U.S. funding or not, the outcome is still the same. They're going to lose. So, he can end that war quickly. Gaza? No. I don't believe anybody can end Gaza quickly. Biden came out and he rolled out a plan for ending the conflict in Gaza, but that did not get received well. My understanding is not even, Israel drafted up like some thoughts on what, like starter thoughts, essentially. here's kind of what we would need to start talking about. But it was incomplete, and Biden's rolling it out, and even Israel saying, no, 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 that's actually, we're not going to stop fighting if they just give us our prisoners back and agree to rebuild. No, we need to know that they can't fight anymore. So if Israel and Palestine are both fighting and they're not going to stop fighting until the other side is eradicated, well, I don't care who's in office. No, that one's a holy war. That's not a war. That's not we're fighting over oil or we're fighting over ownership of kind of land. That's no. It's a holy war. You're fighting over who's right and who's wrong, and that one is just gonna that one's gonna drag out. I don't see any way for that to end quickly. I don't see any way for that to. I don't see any way for that to really do anything other than play itself out. But I also don't know why it becomes such a big talking point, because I don't think Americans really care when it comes to voting. What I do think Americans care about is dollars going to Ukraine that could be spent on Americans. Yeah, that matters. Dollars going to Gaza that could be spent in America. That matters. But the wars and how long it takes them to play out, no, that's just not. I have not seen that as a voting issue, and I've actually asked people about that one. I've done a lot of polls with people to ask them about voting issues. America First is a voting issue. The support Americans receive versus other countries receive, yeah, that's a voting issue. But the wars, I don't know a lot of people who really care. Not enough to change their vote. So we'll have to see how that one plays out. But personally, I just don't think that's gonna. I don't think that's gonna do well. Let me just check a couple more chats before we kind of close out our show for today. I know there was a lot of back and forth. Let me see. Dano, cure your ignorance. What the conviction did was make me want Trump for president even more. Yep, Greg Sutton, that's exactly what I am. That's exactly what I expect to see. It makes people want their candidate to win even more, but it doesn't get them to cross party lines. Dano, I need to go for a drive in my new truck. Good luck, Gene. Hong Kong is calling you, but the gal I tried to set you up with is now engaged. Okay. That's a whole separate side story, but Dano, I mentioned that that woman and I were just not, that's not a match. Dr. Sigrid, wow, a new truck, yawn. That's kind of funny. So yeah, keep an eye out for the polls in the next, well, it's going to be the next couple of weeks, because I think Trump is going to remain even higher in the polls for the next couple of weeks. What I am curious about is going to be what poll numbers show coming out of the first debate, because I don't think any of the polling numbers that we've seen so far are very useful. I've been very clear about this. Polls are easily manipulated and polls are not reliable. 2016, the poll said Hillary Clinton was going to win. That was wrong. That was dead wrong. 2020, the poll said Biden was going to win by a large margin. Again, that was dead wrong. Biden won, but it was really close. What the polls seem to do is give you a sense for what the popular vote is going to look like. Polls do seem to be pretty consistent with that. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. Biden won the popular vote by a reasonably large margin. You could argue large margin, like 80 million versus 75 million. Okay, so the polls are great for that, but we don't choose a president based on the popular vote. We choose a president based on the Electoral College. And the polls do not tell us what the Electoral College is going to come back with. So the polls don't really seem to matter. However, if we come out of the debate and the poll numbers for Trump or Biden start to surge, well, what that does tell us is whether the debates helped or harmed Trump or Biden. Who benefited from the debate? Biggest thing to watch for, though, is going to be, can Trump stay focused during the debate? He's going to have a lot on his mind. He's got a lot of things to deal with. And he's going to be stuck in a format where he has to prioritize messages. And he's got a lot of things to try to talk about. So he's going to be at a bit of a disadvantage. We'll see what that does. And we'll see if that changes the way they approach the second debate. Who's to say? But I'm very curious to see where that goes. I will ask everyone who's in to click like and click subscribe. We'll be doing more of these. Tuesdays are generally pretty reliable. Other times of the week, it just kind of depends on my schedule and what's going on in the news. But I try to get people to talk about things when they're relatively fresh. Just kind of depends. But I'm the last good man in Jersey. Signing out. Hope you enjoyed the show.